Hi everybody, welcome back to yet another edition of Collecting Canadian Cavalry and Armour. Now today we're going to look at more of the armored side of things with tank parts. I know what you guys are thinking, what the heck is he doing with tank parts? Well, let me tell you, until I can afford a real one, and as you know, my very supportive wife will let me keep one in the driveway for a couple of years anyway, but until that happens, you end up picking up tank parts and all kinds of other weird stuff like that. So let's take a quick look at some of the items that we have on display here. So the first piece we're going to look at is this the fire control box that we had on the Cougars. Okay? We'll move this in here so we don't break it. But you can see here we've got all of the different control buttons, turret power, exhaust blowers, everything else, firing the smoke grenade discharges, coax, main armament, all this type of stuff. You know, maybe one day I'll get a Cougar, the armored vehicle, that is, not my wife. You know, and we have all these parts. Now, where this actually came from is the Windsor Police Service got an old Cougar from the military to use as a tactical rescue vehicle. But they had to strip out all the bad stuff, well, all the war stuff, right? So what they did is the gun was gone, but they pulled all this stuff out. And everything that they took out, I grabbed. And that's in storage in somebody else's place with the idea that maybe when they stopped using it, we could get it for either the Windsor Regiment Association or ideally in my collection. But we'll see. But of course, the current Liberal government has a policy against selling used military vehicles and stuff like that to private collectors or to association. The only group that gets these things are the Ontario Regiment. But fingers crossed, you never know. So anyway, nice piece of Cougar equipment. So this particular periscope came out of an M113 Armored Personnel Carrier or Lynx. Could be either. The Lynx, as you know, is the reconnaissance, tracked reconnaissance vehicle that the Canadian Armored Corps used. And so the infantry, the mechanized infantry. But we're concentrating on armored stuff here. So this was a periscope that came out of the driver's hatch. So kind of neat, fully functional still. So if I get a Lynx, got a periscope. But this one here, this is interesting. This is just the top, this sat on the outside of a Czech BMP-2. Now how I came about getting this is a very interesting story. Good friend of mine, Doug Fox, God rest his soul. Miss that guy. Anyway, he knew that I collected. He was on the NATO tour in Bosnia because we had served together actually during UNPROFOR in the mid-90s, and they went back with the RCDs. And he knew that I collected stuff, so one evening he took advantage of a situation, and now I have the top part of this BMP-2 periscope in my collection. Thanks again, Doug, and God rest your soul. So these next couple of items comes from the Centurion main battle tank. First thing we have here is the tank book. Okay, so this is all the information on the tank itself. You can see all kinds of information, who did what, when it was embordened, when things were worked on, all kinds of stuff in here. Really kind of neat little book, you know, for collecting, you know, armored stuff, right? And right on the front here, you can see it was 1953 was the manufacturer, and then the CFR number was 81185. So that would be the license plate, the one on the front of the tank. Kind of neat Centurion thing. And of course, this is a scale model of the Centurion, right? I'll put that aside here so I don't break it. And then this is a first aid kit for tanks and armored cars. Kind of neat little item to have, especially because inside, if I can get this bugger open, you still have a whole bunch of the equipment that was in there. Right, so not only do we have the box labeled up Armored Corps stuff, but we have all kinds of the old stuff that's in here. Matches, of course, right? Probably a picture of somebody. Have to look at that later. Kind of neat to have this type of stuff in your collection. So, Centurion battle tank. Okay, now this next piece here, I was told when I bought it, is the sight from a Ram tank, Canadian-made Ram tank. Now on here you can see this is telescope sighting, right, with all the markings, Canada. We've got the date in 1943. Still has all the optics in it. It's in beautiful condition. Now all I need is a Ram tank to go with it. But you got to start somewhere. So here's the sight. and inside you still have the graphical pattern is still in there, and everything. So really nice part to my collection. I just hope it really is a sight for a ram. Now this next piece is really a very interesting piece of track. There's two track links here, and this particular track is called Canadian Dry Pin. Now this track was very unique. It was only used on the Canadian Grizzly tank, which of course was the Canadian version of the M4 Sherman. It was also used on the Sexton self-propelled artillery because it would use the same chassis. Now the story behind this piece is some of the guys in the Windsor Regiment were in Borden training, and as you know, Borden was the tank school during the war, actually even after the war until everything was moved out to Gagetown. So the guys were out in the training area and they tripped over this thing half buried in the sand. And of course, they said what any other good armored guys would say, what a cool piece of thing to find here. So they lugged this thing all the way back up. They claim was about 2 to 3 kilometers back, and then this thing weighs a ton. It really does. Only 2 track links, but everything in the tank is heavy. So they lug it back, throw it in the back of the Rotus, get it back to Windsor, and then go, what the hell are we going to do with this thing? So I happened to be down there visiting, and they said, hey, do you want this for your collection? And of course I said yes. So here we are with a very unique piece of Canadian armored history, the dry pin track that was used on the Grizzly tank. Now this last thing here, this is another periscope, but it's the bottom. This would fit, it's upside down, it would fit this way up into a Valentine tank. And here's a little model of the Valentine. And this is where the periscopes are here. These two up front and up here on the turret. This can move around, adjust and everything else. Really kind of neat. And very interesting piece of Canadian armored history. Now, yes, you're right. The Valentine was designed by Britain. But many of these were produced in Canada during the war. And almost all of them went to Russia under the Lend-Lease agreement. And if you go to the Canadian War Museum, down under the Breton Gallery, where all the armored vehicles are, which is really cool. You got to go there. If you're ever in Ottawa, you got to go to the tank War Museum and see the tanks. Now, like I was saying, down there, they found one of these tanks sunk in a bog in the Ukraine. They pulled it out, hosed it off, and sent it back, and it's just as is condition, sitting in the War Museum. So if you want to see a real live Valentine tank that was made in Canada and returned many years later, it's right there in Ottawa. Looks similar to this, but a little rougher condition. So very neat, very lucky to have this piece of Canadian tank history here in my collection. Okay, everybody, so I hope you enjoyed this kind of different episode on collecting Canadian Cavalry and Armour stuff. Again, like I said, if you have a supportive spouse or you have the room, you know, picking up these little odds and ends, little bits to accentuate your collection is always kind of neat, you know, because not everybody has pieces of tank track or that kind of thing in their collection. So anyway, like I said, I hope that we've given you an idea of some other stuff to collect or to add into or supplement your collection. And like I said, it's wonderful hunting this stuff down. But I hope everybody have a great day. Go out there, find those badges, get those reference books, and happy collecting.